Good morning. My name is Natasa Milic-Frayling. I'm principal researcher at Microsoft Research in Cambridge. Just to set expectations, Microsoft Research is a cost center. We don't actually produce anything. So what you're going to hear today is perspective of a researcher. I've been with Microsoft for the past 14 years. I'm primarily working on personal computing, absolutely obsessed with the digital technologies. And for today, I thought I would just give you some perspective on issues with digital technologies. When I heard from Uday about this meeting, actually I thought about so many meetings I had with libraries and archives and institutions from public sector coming to us and say, what can Microsoft do with the digital heritage? What can Microsoft do with any heritage, national heritage, cultural heritage? And you know, Microsoft is in the business of providing tools for creating digital content, and you know, together with other members of the industry who are doing this, actually we are creating something that's extremely difficult to deal with. And for today I just wanted to give you some insights of what things you should be aware of if you are thinking about running digital services. So if I were an investor and looking at your proposal, I'd be thinking about, are you telling me anything about these three things? So when somebody creates a digital content, they use Microsoft, say, Office or something. So the perceived cost of creating the content is whatever you pay to Microsoft for Office, right? After that, you basically create something. And then you come to me and say, Natasha, you can now have it forever. Take it. You can do anything. There is no copyright issue with it, and there'll be lots of people wanting it. And I will just put my running shoes and run away. Because the problem is that that digital object that you give to me actually generates costs for me. And if I don't take care of it, especially if I decide that I'm going to keep it forever for the posterity, then I'm in real business of paying a lot of money just to keep it alive. And to think about children, now you're having millions of digital objects. Each of them actually need to be taken care of. So that's one thing. And so the second thing is exploitation. Suppose that you sort of figure out what the consumers want. So you will have a picture of exploitation strategy. The question is that object that you gave, you've been given or you have stored, exploitation means that it has to be used in a contemporary environment. So in a way, you have to think about something that was given to you, it represents something of 10 years ago, needs to be now connected to the contemporary environment. What is the cost of doing this? And finally, when you address these two, you say, okay, now I think I've got some users. Now I have to think about what's going to be my monetization strategy. Am I going to really use the content to create a value and therefore based on that sustain my whole application, or am I going to do something else? And there's something else these days, again, is very, very relevant to digital, and it's not possible in physical. In digital, whoever is interacting with your service or whoever is interacting with the digital system is leaving footprints. And those digital footprints are becoming an asset. Yes, they are digital. Again, you have to take care of it. But at least you can do something with it. And most of the business models these days are actually based on digital footprints. Okay. So a little bit of insight on the digital side. What is the problem with this cost generation thing that I said? Somebody gives you a document, say, keep it with these for the posterity. Where is the cost? The issue is that they gave you a file. Now, the human cannot really consume a file. We don't have sensors for it. There's no way. Zeros and ones that are stored on the disk, inaccessible to human. The only way I can access it is by actually having quite sophisticated infrastructure to store it. I have to have software and hardware to show it to me. And there are only three ways I can consume it. I can either see it, therefore I have to have a render image, I can hear it, or maybe you can have something I can touch. So in a way, there are three ways. But these three ways require for me to maintain something that can play this object. So that's what I'm basically showing here. Somebody gives you a file, but they don't tell you about everything else. So now, in order to generate value out of this, you have to think how that's going to be presented to people. Because people are the ones that you want to generate value from or provide value to. Now, you can argue, well, people don't have to see it. I just put it in the search engine. So that's good. So then you're presenting material. You don't have to render it, but at least you have to have something to process this and unfold the structure, and you can index it, process it, and so on. So still you have to think about, again, how do you go from this file that was given to you to some other form that actually will create a business. Okay. So that's the source of the problem. We humans can't consume it. It requires infrastructure. If somebody gives to you, you better make sure you have money to maintain the infrastructure. Okay. Now the question now is, how do we generate value? Suppose you solve the problem of infrastructure, you now need to somehow create the value, and that's possible only if you can reuse it, if the content can be reused. And I was recently at a conference in Texas, and there was this fantastic system. They were showing me the digital content of a whole village, which is stored on the tapes, magnetic tapes, in a mountain. So they're all well protected. Now, in order to get the content, you have to have a robotic arm, pick up the tape, put it somewhere, read it, and then you can use it. Now, you can imagine if you want to build a service on it, how complicated that would be. The only thing I can do is probably print it, if I have a local printer or something. That system has to be connected with the rest of the world. Otherwise, it has to print money by itself, which it's a different business. So the data itself cannot print money. It has to be connected with other parts of the ecosystem so that the value can flow between one system and another system. Okay. So reuse, the fundamental issue here is we need to persist it, and then we need to connect it with the rest of the ecosystem. In research, we have, in Microsoft, in a small sense, we were looking at this. Imagine you have Office documents that are running on, you can see them on PC or on tablet. And then somebody brings to you Surface, and you go and touch, oh, this is fantastic, it's multi-touch. And by the way, none of these applications that are multi-touch enabled. So now, how are you going to import the Office documents into the Surface so you can do something? It's not, even just this contemporary system, where we normally talk about interoperability, is not working automatically. Somebody has to invest to transform or somehow create a bridge between one platform and another platform. So this is all known to you. I'm just saying it's not often very, very appreciated, especially when somebody comes to you and say, here are the terabytes of data, here's the treasure, now do something with it. There are lots of things to think about. So what we had to do generally think hard about what Microsoft would do with Office documents. And together with Bram van der Werf here from Open Planets Foundation, we participated with libraries and archives in a number of projects. And the latest one is Scape, and it's about long-term access to digital content. And we had to think very hard what are the strategies. And there are basically two strategies. If you have a digital object, you either keep transforming it to make it, keep it aligned with the contemporary environment. Another one is you try to create an environment, encapsulate it, in which you can run this object, you can see this object, you can render it. And there's sort of visualization and simulation, emulation. Yeah? So there are two strategies at the moment, and both of them are very hard. So just to show you, this is kind of a conversion matrix that we had to implement just to be able to work with Office documents. You have a WordPerfect document, and you want to see it now on your mobile phone in deep zoom. So what would you do? So in a way, often you have to have a number of different transformers in order to get it into the format that you can experience it in a contemporary environment. Now, the final thing I just want to talk about, once you do these transformation services, you move objects from one form to another, then the libraries and archives, particularly archivists, to say, well, what's the fidelity? But the same would be from the lawyer. Lawyer would ask, what's the fidelity? Because I referred to that paragraph on that page. If you transform it, will I be able to still refer to that paragraph on that page? So most of the time, people think about the rendering image, that's what they want to preserve. But it's slightly in conflict with the kind of long-term view. It's definitely something that you may need to have, and in some scenarios, absolutely. But in the future, if something is not transformable, if you can't see it on different devices, if you can't reflow the document, if you can't find the structure of a document, just keeping an eye on the rendering aspect of it is not going to get you very far in generating the value. Okay? So in a way, what we are now thinking about, in order to create a sustainability cycle, we need users and industry to come together and say, what would be acceptable transformation services? What would we say is a good quality? Because then we can have people investing in running businesses in quality assurance over the transformation of these objects or simulation. Without this, nobody is going to step into the marketplace, because I can come with one tool, you come with another one, and the customer doesn't really know how to evaluate it. And they're all investing lots of money. As I said, it generates cost. Investing lots of money, thinking about how to preserve it forever, especially archives, and it's all taxpayer money, so we should be concerned about. Now, just on a final note, I mentioned the digital footprints, and I heard very interesting projects here today, and I know the libraries and archives are also thinking about very interesting projects on how to provide the content to people. At the moment, you can imagine two layers. You have infrastructure, and then you have user engagement. Infrastructure is for storing, maintaining, migrating, quality assurance. That's what needs to be done underneath. But in order to sustain that, we need engagement on top. And if you look at the Facebook, LinkedIn, Flickr, YouTube, they all deal with this. We can all learn from them how they've done it. The only slight problem there is that this infrastructure plus engagement, this engagement is not very clear. Essentially, the value proposition to the customer has been such that this is free, but we keep the footprint. We keep your digital footprint. And don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. At the moment, there is a big push now on understanding what it means when aggregation of the digital footprints happens and how much of the privacy is implied. So, as some of you may be aware, the law is tightening on what can be done with digital footprint. So it will be very interesting to look at models where the value proposition is very clearly aligned with, so there is transparency between what people get and what they give, because so far that has not been done. In some instances, it may be that the digital footprint need to be given to people, and they trade that with you. So you have a service, but you have an engagement model in which they would release some of this information for you, so you can reuse it, and you both generate value. They get some points, and you get enough money to sustain the whole ecosystem. Okay, I'll leave it here. So there were these three things I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha.